This incredibly complex digital world we all live in, from our banking apps to our social feeds, it didn't just happen by accident. It's built by architects. And they have a secret weapon, a really powerful way of thinking that makes it all possible. So let's dive in and uncover it.
Okay, so to really get this secret, we've got to meet one of these master builders.
So this is Thushara Ariyasena. He's a software architect with over 16 years of experience. And yeah, he's one of the folks behind the scenes building these massive, complex systems that pretty much run our modern lives.
And believe me, his world is incredibly complex. He's designing these huge distributed systems, building out cloud platforms, and he's navigating the super high-stakes world of banking compliance. We're talking about building systems that literally watch transactions to stop fraud. This is seriously intricate work. Okay, so you've got all this crazy technical knowledge, right? Java, Kafka, cloud computing, the whole shebang. But what's the one skill that ties it all together? What is his single most critical ability?
Well, the answer is right here, and we've pulled it directly from his own professional summary. It's the ability to abstract. This is it. It's his secret weapon. It's the power to look at these insanely complex problems and just find the simple, elegant pattern hiding inside.
All right, but what does that even mean, to abstract? It's not just about making things simpler. It's a very deliberate choice about how you're going to look at something.
The best way to think about it is like a camera with a really powerful zoom lens. Abstraction is that conscious choice of where you're going to set that zoom. Are you looking at the massive big picture, or are you zooming all the way in to see the tiniest little mechanics? Look, both views are totally true, but they're answering completely different questions, right? And what this zoom lens shows us is this really powerful idea that reality, it's not just one single thing. It's actually made of layers. And there's a different kind of truth at every single level.
Okay, let's take a flower, for example. At our normal zoomed-out view, we see beauty, we see color and shape. Zoom in a bit, and now we see cells. Zoom in even further, you see molecules, and then finally, individual atoms. Now here's the really important part. That idea of beauty, it just vanishes when you get down to the atomic level. But does that make the beauty any less real? Of course not. Neither view is wrong. They're just different layers of truth, and they're both totally valid.
And you know what? Biology works the exact same way. To really, truly understand life, you have to study the cells, the whole organisms, and the ecosystems they live in. Every single level, every layer of abstraction is absolutely essential. You can't just swap one for the other and expect to understand the whole picture. Okay, so now let's see what happens when we pick the wrong level of abstraction. It's a super simple story, but it perfectly illustrates this huge mistake that architects are always trying to avoid.
So, there's this guy, right? He's got a cat. He carves one hole in the wall. It's the perfect size for the cat. Simple problem, simple solution. Everything works perfectly. But then, the cat has 3 kittens. So the guy looks at this and thinks, okay, 3 new cats, that must mean 3 new problems. And what does he do? He goes and carefully carves 3 brand new, smaller holes, one for each kitten.
And what happens? Well, of course, the kittens completely ignore the new holes. Why would they use them? They just followed their mom right through the original big hole that already worked perfectly fine for everyone.
And this is where we get to the real point. His mistake wasn't that he was bad at carving holes. No, his failure was in his abstraction. He was solving for specific instances, one hole per cat, instead of figuring out the real underlying rule, which was, I need a passage that lets animals of different sizes get through. He made things more complex when he could have kept it simple.
All right, so let's bring this all back to the digital world, because that little story, that perfectly captures the exact kind of challenge that architects like Thushara face every single day.
You see, modern technology is basically this giant tower of abstractions. Way down at the bottom, you've got the actual physical transistors and logic gates. And way up at the top, you've got the apps and systems we use every day. And every single layer in this tower cleverly hides the crazy complexity of the layer right below it. And that's what lets a developer work up here at a higher level without having to worry about the physics of every single tiny transistor down at the bottom. It's brilliant.
And here is where it all clicks into place. An architect's #1 job is to avoid carving a new hole for every single kitten. They have to find that underlying rule, not just put a Band-Aid on the immediate problem. And that, right there, is the difference between building something that's strong and can grow and building a fragile, complicated mess that's just going to fall apart.
But, here's what I think is the most fascinating part of all this. This skill, it's not just for software architects, it's something that's fundamental to being human.
Now, you might be thinking that this kind of architectural mindset, it must require some kind of special brain, right? Some totally new kind of intelligence. But the really surprising thing is, it doesn't.
What it demands is that we intentionally use a skill we already have, a skill we use instinctively every single day. I mean, we are abstracting all the time. We do it when we classify people as trustworthy or not, or when we decide a situation feels safe or risky, or an environment feels familiar or hostile. These are all mental models. They're abstractions, and they help us navigate the world without our brains just completely overloading on every tiny detail.
The huge difference, though, comes down to responsibility. See, in software, a bad abstraction, carving too many holes in the wall, it isn't just a small inconvenience. The consequences can stick around for years, and they can spread across a huge system, costing millions and millions of dollars.
And that really brings us to the core idea here. Abstraction isn't some advanced, super technical trick you learn in a textbook. It's a fundamental way of seeing, a way of looking at the world and finding the real pattern hidden underneath all the noise.
So, the next time you're up against a really complex problem, whether it's at work or just in your life, remember that zoom lens. The answer might not be right there in front of you and all the tiny details. It might be in the hidden patterns that only show up when you decide to change your perspective. So the only real question is, where are you going to choose to look?